energy equals, or E equals mc squared, which happens to be like energy is converted to matter at the speed of light times exponentially squared. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
our spinal cord, or some people like to call like the chakra, is like literally the antenna towards our environment and the universe in a bigger sense of the meaning. And it also connects us to our brain, which happens to help us perceive what's happening around us. And at this point, it seems like you're having an understanding of your own physical processes and your mental processes. Now you are in the state of working in accordance with the universe. You're building things out through your mind. And as you're in the process of building out through your mind, you're actually always investing all that you've learned back into yourself by feeding yourself with good knowledge, with good food to provide yourself with the energy to keep on doing things. So what I'm gonna ask you next, I think we might get in deeper with this one.
All right.
You're consciously aware of everything because you are a co-creator with this reality, right? And you can control your own actions and how you feel about certain situations that happen around you. So, talking to the spiritual audience, as well as talking to people that may not be so tapped into their spirituality and are more tapped into reality, how do you balance out with what you see happening around us today? Because as of recording this day, there's protests happening, or it's starting to sway down. It's during the election year. There's, I don't want to try to influence your thinking or anything right here. There happens to be a virus. I don't want to even say the name because the YouTube algorithm might pick it up and might suppress our information. So that's another thing.
Yeah. How are we creating that?
So for co-creators, for people that are tapped into their spirituality or are at least self-actualized, they don't even have to be just self-actualized and are creating their reality. How do you find personally the balance between receiving all this news from the news media, from what you're seeing around you, and from even social media from your peers and other co-creators? Because it seems like all the co-creators on social media, which happens to be like if you're watching this video, you're a co-creator, is that you're contributing part to the reality from what you're learning. So how do you find, Jared, the balance between all the outside noise and to what you're doing today?
Yeah, it's a great point, because a lot of people that get interested in spirituality or law of attraction and deliberate creation and stuff like that, they have a challenging time kind of reconciling between that potential and then seeing parts of like physical reality and like, well, this doesn't make sense. Like, look at all this crazy stuff that's happening. It doesn't resonate. Like, that's not what I want to focus on. And so a lot of times I'll just like ignore it or whatever. So there's a lot of factors to it. But number one, ultimately, and it reminds me of what one of my mentors said. He said, actually one of his mentors had a lot of different businesses back in the 80s, I believe, like concrete and all these other businesses. And there was this like big recession that happened, and he was talking to him and he's like, hey, this huge recession's happening. How's everything in your businesses? And the guy said, oh, I chose not to participate. Right? He chose not to participate in the recession, right? So that no matter what happens outside, it doesn't have to affect our reality, right? So they might say, oh yeah, you can't leave your house, or yeah, you have to wear a mask or whatever. But ultimately it doesn't have to affect your reality unless you say so, right? Because there's always a way. This is another cool thing. It's like, when your attitude's right, the facts don't count, right? And so people that say, oh, you have to wear a mask, well, that's a fact to them, but that's really an opinion, right? That's an opinion that we have to wear a mask. And the fact that they say, oh, it's safe, well, is that a fact? No,
there's a lot of conflicting reports. I mean, I can see both.
There's a lot of conflicting reports. Yeah, absolutely. And so, if you happen to say, well, I have a health condition and I'm exempt from wearing a mask, like that's almost like a magic wand that you can just, wave, and people will just, oh, okay, that's fine. You don't have to wear a mask, right? So if you have a medical condition or health condition, they can't ask you what it is. So, realizing that there's life hacks for almost everything, and no one can affect your life unless you give them the permission to. I remember in the book, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, he was in these concentration camps, in Nazi Germany. And one of the things, and he, made it out alive. He wrote this book. It was a great book. And so one of the things that he realized is, like, even in that situation, in those concentration camps, his attitude, no one could take his attitude or his mindset or what he was focusing on from him. He was separated from his wife. His wife got murdered. He was, basically in these treacherous, horrible situations.
The Holocaust.
Yeah, exactly. And like people right next to him were taken away and killed. So it's like not a pleasant experience. People like complain nowadays, but it's like, well, look at kind of the blessings that we have compared to like things that people have dealt with before. But even like his mindset, like no one could take his attitude from him, even in that situation. So he had this mindset of, he knew he was going to be free. He knew that there was a better environment out there. And so through that attitude, through that focus of his, he was able to, stay alive, get past that situation and make it out and actually live a quote unquote normal life after that. But it really just comes down to understanding the power of our attitude. And again, not being at effect, right? Because we have all this stuff like news media and other things and people on social media and this stuff. It's like, that's always coming at us from outside, but it doesn't have to affect us unless we choose it to, right? And so this is just always a great opportunity to realize that we are deliberate creators, and that just happens to be more data that the universe is providing us to allow us to clarify our preferences. Like, what do we want? What do we want to focus on? I even made just a couple quick clips on social media today. It's like, the people who are that have goals are successful because they know where they're going. And so if we don't have goals, it's easy to get distracted or to drift. There's a great book by Napoleon Hill, who was Outwitting the Devil, which a lot of that is talking about how the people that have a specific like chief aim and a very clear goal, those are the people that achieve the most success. And those are the people that quote unquote the devil can't get to, because the devil gets to people by an open mind, meaning you don't have a specific focus, you don't stand for something, you aren't focused on something, so you're going to drift and you're going to go in different places, and then you get distracted and all these things. And so that's what often happens with people that don't have a clear focus, is they get distracted with things in politics or things in the environment or whatever it may be. It's just an excuse to not like focus and create what they want. So
yeah, so
I hope that answers the question.
No, you're answering the question. You're actually, dude, like, it's probably a good thing we have a time limit, because we can go down the rabbit hole pretty deep. So, so now, like, let's bring it through like the spirituality and psychological lens. The reason why I like to say spirituality and psychological, because I don't want to lose people, because for me personally, it's how you define these terms, right? When it all, in essence, they're all interconnected, no matter how hard you try to pull them apart. So now going back into absorbing all this good and bad news, because through the law of polarity, you're going to have your negatives and you're going to have your positive, and you choose what you want to listen to and what you want to digest and synthesize and create whatever in your life to match your reality of what you're seeing. So for you've gotten this whole filtering effect of you're getting all this negative information and you're getting all this positive information. Where do you see yourself personally, what you're doing with all that information? Because I know you say you concentrate only on your actions, but when we do see something negative, how do you synthesize that, and in what ways do you try to make it better?
Yeah, it's a great question, especially now with like so much going on. So again, it kind of comes back to everything that happens can be detrimental to us, or we can use it as an opportunity to create more of what we want, to clarify what we want. So as an example, people that get into relationships, so let's say they're in a relationship with someone and their partner is mean and berates them and all these things and argues for no reason. And so like if a person's in that situation, they're like, well, this doesn't feel good, I don't like this, I don't want to be in this situation. Okay, it's like, okay, fine. You can either like struggle and be more angry and continue to make it worse, or you can decide, okay, this is what I don't want. What do I want? Well, I want a partner that is loving. I want a partner that is compassionate. I want a partner that is, and then you can list out all of those things and then get out of that relationship and then be okay with, quote unquote, being alone or being on your own. But then you utilized that opportunity to clarify what you wanted. And when you're able to then use that energy, that intense energy, and then you shift it and focus it onto the areas that you do want, it helps you create that faster. And so it's the same.
The concept of like self-love, like literally self-love.
Yeah.
You're practicing self-love to yourself, and then you'll attract people that are within that same vibration, which you've said before, like you attract like minds. Well, you're going to also attract like hearts and like souls. So yeah, keep on going. I had to just throw that in there.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. And so also, like, seeing stuff in the news and all different levels of craziness that are going on. Again, ultimately, from my understanding, like, our gut feeling is senior to any external situation, right? So for me, if I'm looking at a news story and I'm like, oh, these many people died today, or oh, now this building's on fire, or oh, now they're doing this and this and this and this, for me, pretty troubling. And a lot of people can be like frightened if they're like looking at external situations and not understanding that there may be a kind of a bigger reason for why it's happening. So for me, I kind of like to zoom out a little bit and say, is there a reason that this is happening? If so, what might be a reason that this is happening? And so as I kind of like zoom out or like question the narrative and like just be aware of like different perspectives, and like David Wolf says, like, play with possibilities, right? Not necessarily having beliefs, but like just play with possibilities. So as I play with possibilities and kind of just think from different perspectives, I'm like, oh, well, maybe this is happening so that people wake up. Maybe there's more actual change happening now than ever before. And I know so many people have a very strong opinion of Donald Trump, but at the same time, there's more people that are now interested in politics and are running for office and doing running for Congress and all these things. Like, they're waking up. Like, he's helping wake more people up to like what's going on. So whether you like him or not, it doesn't really matter. But what matters is
let's stay right there. So of course I like how you brought it out to the macro perspective, because a lot of people bring it down to their lens, and they only see through their lens and filter out through the lens, and they're not aware of like the bigger picture, because there's levels to this shit. Like, there's levels to this shit. And so when you bring Trump's name, my personal feeling on Trump, he's kind of funny to me. Do I support some of his policies are good, especially when it comes to wanting to reinvest in the U.S. and balance out the scales of power within the world, because China's up kind of like on the rise right now. And what I want to say about him is he doesn't really conduct himself presidentially, but then his interests seem to be very aligned to being American-centric. So give me your perspective on Trump to people that are not liking Trump. Like, what makes it, like, what do you think he's revealing to us that we are not aware of, basically?
Yeah. So for me, like, I'm not an expert in politics, but what I've been doing over these last few months, like, I was even never really interested in politics up until this whole like quarantine thing. Cause I'm like, wait a second, like, what is that? I'm like, yeah, what is this? What's going on? Like, and then, so that's when I just started learning more about Trump and, what's going on. And that's what really opened my eyes even more so to, like the mainstream media, like, cause I had heard people like endorse Trump, when he was running, and I'm like, okay, like, I never really thought much about it. And then I would also see things in mainstream media like, oh, he's done this, oh, he's incompetent, oh, he's racist, all these different things. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I don't know. So I didn't really know kind of, what to believe or what sense of what was going on. But as I started watching his press conferences, and I started seeing what he had actually been doing and his executive orders, and seeing his press conferences, and then seeing how the mainstream media would then like chop it and like not even be honest or truthful with what. And then they also had this super strong opinion, like they just absolutely hate Trump. And, oh, here's the 2 seconds of what he said. And we're not going to play his full sentence, but here's the 2 sentences of what he said. And, oh my God, I can't believe he's so terrible.
Things can get taken out of context.
So once I like started even just realizing that, like watching his actual press conferences and what he said, and I'm like, whoa, that makes a lot of sense. And then seeing like on news media of them just like butchering his whole like talk and just like taking it out of context. So then I was like, oh, okay. And then things just started clicking. Like, the reason he says fake news media, I mean, yeah, maybe there's a reason why that is, because like, and so it's ridiculous. So as I just started learning more about it, I started realizing that, man, like, Trump's done some really, really cool stuff, like legalizing industrial hemp production in the U.S. The fact that the lowest unemployment rates for, Black people, Asian Americans, Hispanics, in over 50 years, or sometimes in all time states. Like seeing his executive orders and seeing the things that he's done and accomplished, like renegotiating our trade deals, people that were policing the whole world and they weren't paying us. Now he's like, look, you have to pay us. Like we're not going to police you for free. And if you don't, then we're going to take our troops out. So it's like I didn't even realize the fact of like making America great again, quote unquote, like how messed up it was getting, like all the jobs and factories leaving because of all these regulations and taxes and all these different things. Like he's lowered taxes, right? The corporate tax is much lower than it was, lowering regulations. And he's even doing that more now because with the Defense Production Act and this whole national emergency, he's able to do things that, wouldn't be so easy before. So he's like literally, ordered the different government agencies to reduce regulations as much as possible.
So
a lot of people, go ahead.
Let me ask you, what do you think is the play for the mainstream media? Because I want to focus a little bit on we can focus on anything, but when you say the mainstream media, I feel like the media, what we're doing right now, we're influencing people. When you have big mainstream corporations that are funded by billions and probably not trillions, but billions of dollars to push their agenda.
From drug companies. Oh, what? Nothing.
Creating more ham.
Vaccines are safe. Get your vaccines, folks. Get your vaccines. You won't hear anything otherwise on mainstream media.
But that's what I'm saying is mainstream media is shaping the narrative, and most people have a hard time diving deep into issues and understanding the concepts and applying critical thinking to see what else is happening. I feel like most people are allowing their emotions to take over their senses. And with the stock market, you usually have the rich people. The way the stock market works is when rich people are having a mood swing, that's usually the mood swing of the stock market. And then with ground or boots to the ground, everyday person, with the mainstream media, they're kind of playing with our emotions a little bit because we are guided by our emotions. And we act out and we tend to fall into these beliefs right away without really thinking about the issues and seeing from multiple perspectives. So why is it that Trump is getting so much hate? And what is the agenda of media, whether it's on Fox News or it's on CNN News? Where can we see the top of the pyramid of what mainstream media represents? Where's that going? And why do they want to take out somebody like Trump?
Yeah, sure. It's a great point too. And where will you see the top of the pyramid? And it's like that's the challenge because they don't, like, the people that run things aren't visible, right? Even Trump says, we're at war with an invisible enemy. Like he's not just talking about the virus, right? There's more to what he says when he talks. So you have to look at who owns these media companies, right? So do some research, right? And anyone that, and it's what's great now is, I've been aware to varying degrees of corporate government corruption over the last few years, learning from different people. So I was kind of somewhat aware of the mainstream media and how they're not really honest. But now it's just become much more apparent. But as an example, the Bilderberg Group. Some people may have heard about it. Some people may have not.
Dude, give us a little information, man. Give us the information.
Yeah, no, of course. So some people would be like, "Oh, what's that?" Or, "Oh, no, it's just some conspiracy theory." But it's like this thing that it used to just be "quote unquote" conspiracy theory until it was proven over and over again that yes, there's a group of people that meet every single year at a different place. It's called the Bilderberg Group, and it's basically people that run the different industries. So bankers and politicians and royal families from different countries. And a few years, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, they started bringing in people that run the social media networks. So the CEO of LinkedIn went to a Bilderberg meeting. I'm sure Zuckerberg went.
For real?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Because
yeah, for sure.
LinkedIn has some big societal implications when it comes to career. Wow, okay, keep going, man. I didn't mean to. That just caught me.
No, look it up.
Wow, okay.
For sure. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We have no idea the amount of craziness that has gone into it. But yeah, so because basically anytime, because what is the the hidden hand or the Illuminati or whatever you want to call it, they want to control the masses, and so they do that through controlling the monopolies. And so when you have social media, Twitter, Google, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, so forth, LinkedIn, they control, that's like the quote unquote new media. And so they can't just let it be free. They want to do everything they can to make sure that it's controlled. So they bring people, the people that run these networks, and they bring them to their group, their meeting. And they, obviously I don't know all the topics that are discussed. I don't know to what degree they go along with their agenda.
There's levels to this shit.
But yeah, there's levels for sure. But I do know that there's incredible amounts of censorship on Twitter. I know I've seen it many, many times. They're even like, anyway, doing a bunch of crazy stuff, even with Trump. But Facebook and Instagram, there's tons of censorship. People that happen to have a conservative perspective, or people that are like Trump supporters, they're getting banned, shadow banned. Their accounts are being deleted, and so it's like that doesn't really seem like a free press, right? So you just got to kind of look into it and not take everything at face value. So that's why I always say, question the narrative, and like don't even believe everything I'm saying. Just do your research. Look up Bilderberg Group attendees. There's probably websites out there that literally list all the attendees from each year's meetings. But you'll have royal families, banking families, people that run drug companies, media people, and not just social media, but also news media. So they have different people there. And like once you just see the list, and it's like, yeah, these people meet every year at different places, and so they rotate their members, so it's different people every year. But it's really interesting stuff. So like understanding that again, the people you see on TV for like news anchors, like they're just reading teleprompters, right? They're reading teleprompters. Who's writing the script? What orders are they taking? What stories are being told?
To add in real quick,
yeah,
is local media is funded by like only a few groups. So there was a funny Conan clip, Conan O'Brien, and a couple other clips where everyone was saying in verbatim exactly like a catchphrase, like, it's getting hot
to our
out
democracy.
There. Yeah,
a threat to our democracy.
So it's like the same kind of like narrative story, or it's narrative punchline. But anyway, go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean that was pretty much the concept. So like one thing people can do is just like people that go to a doctor. It's like if they tell you one thing. Like I was just talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and his dad went to the doctor, and he has like some issues with like his brain and his eyes, his vision's a little off, and they were saying, oh, there's nothing we can really do. It's irreversible. You can't really improve their eyesight or this condition. And then my friend was like it didn't really like resonate with him, and he's like, well, but they're a doctor, they're medical professionals, so you have to take their opinion. They're not giving you a fact, they're giving you their opinion. It's medical opinion. Doctor's opinion, right? Not a doctor's order. They give you their opinion. So what happened to getting a second opinion, right? Get a second opinion. So you're watching this
through even self-knowledge and learning through things. Because I've heard a lot of anecdotal stories about people doing what you said, where they actually Googled it, and somehow through their pursuit of using Google, they actually came to the cure for their symptom. So yeah.
For sure. Like, so as an example, like, so I was talking to him on the phone yesterday, and he had mentioned that, and I'm like, well, have you ever heard of eye yoga? And he's like, what's that? What? Eye yoga? And I'm like, yeah, eye yoga. Yeah, exactly. It sounds weird, but it's exactly what it sounds. So it's like our eyes are muscles, just like every other muscle, and they can be strengthened with exercise. And so I learned this at a seminar sometime. This guy from Israel was born legally blind, and then through a series of doing eye exercises, he literally regained his eyesight, which is a miracle, or can't be done according to medical professionals, right? But it's like they don't know everything. They only know what they're taught, and so they don't know everything. And that's a whole other topic. Like, what are they learning? Well, they're learning, generally speaking, like pharmaceutical company sponsored.
Yeah, it's being
knowledge.
Pushed by the economy. Yes,
it's a whole thing. But yeah, so again, like, get a second opinion, question the narrative, like investigate, research, look it up, see if it's true. There's a video on YouTube of Paul McCartney, of all people, teaching a little bit or guiding through eye yoga. It's just eye exercises. So you just move your eyes in different directions, and it helps strengthens your eyes. So people that get LASIK or whatever, like, that's fine. But have you ever considered doing eye yoga? Because maybe that's another viable option. But teach their own.
Yeah, I think with like I know the medical profession is getting better with like using different knowledge-based systems, like esoteric knowledge, Eastern philosophy, any kind of new knowledge. And I believe that anyone that is in those fields, or any kind of field, should always explore different systems of knowledge, because it may actually round out what you know, or give you a new perspective in helping other people. And so I think you hit the nail on the head, is that do not fall into these Like you see someone with a certificate, you see someone with a uniform, you see something, and all of a sudden you just go, I'm gonna do what they tell me, without really digging deep into your own self-development. Because as you are going in, like all the stuff you're doing is all self-knowledge work. You've learned more stuff, you've done the spiritual work, you've done the physical work, you've done the action work, and it's creating the life you want. And it's also making you think outside of the paradigm of like, wait, there's things going on, and what can I do to make the world around me a better place? And what can I do to basically make society better? Because we are being fed information by only a select few people, because people that are in power, that have accrued a great economic wealth, is forming the narrative. And when we all kind of go into that narrative, playing along with that story, we've allowed our own minds to be enslaved. And I think it's great that you're bringing all this stuff up, because I believe that the audience should have a better understanding of the power that they have within them, especially during these times. So as you're going through these stages, what do you think of the term being woke and being awakened? Because I feel like it's kind of getting thrown around a lot, but I'm gonna let you answer without me saying anything.
Yeah. So the term specifically woke or awaken?
But let's go, define them both for me. Like, go.
Well, I mean, so for me, like woke, like I don't know where that came from.
Mm-hmm.
Like to be woke, like what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean to be aware of like a political specific thing? Like I'm not really sure where that came from, but to be woke, or is that like current events? So I mean that could be open to interpretation, but like to be aware of things, like so for me, kind of just my own like perception of it is to be woke, like to realize that like what we want you to know about, you need to know about, or what we tell you is important needs to be important. Like you need to be woke.
Mm-hmm.
But then like people that say, are you woke? It's like, well, are you aware that there's more going on than what you're woke about? So for me, like rather than like confining to a specific like term or label, it's just like question things, like be aware, like research, learn, I don't know, because there's a lot of things, like again, questioning like where things come from, and like words are super powerful. And that's actually one thing that I found to be very important, is like literally like looking up the definitions of words. Where do words come from?
Mm-hmm.
Like what language they come from? Like for like even up until recently, I wasn't even sure like Latin. I'm like, where does that even come from? Mm-hmm. Where does Latin? What country does Latin come from?
Mm-hmm. Do I know? Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Latin. Well, I just know from Rome, from the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
A lot of through how language has been diversified with all the Romantic languages, which is like French, Spanish, all that. Derived from
Romantic.
Latin.
Does that come from Rome? Romantic.
Yeah, exactly.
I never made that connection.
So
that's interesting. See, words are trippy. Yeah, words are trippy. But yeah, so Rome, Italy. Like I didn't even realize that until I started like looking it up, researching. But
and actually, when you go back far enough, you get to Sanskrit, which is like kind of like the ancient mystical language of India, which happens to be like almost the base root to many languages. So it's like we're gonna
keep going back. We get telepathic, and then we're back to the future.
Here. Let me change my battery. Yeah, we're still recording, but what I want to say next is like about the language. Words have power. And especially with what you're saying, how the media uses words to influence thinking. Now, let's bring it back to like the personal, like for you, go a little bit deeper into that words have power and how that affects your life personally and how it can affect other people's lives, depending on how they use their language. Yeah,
for sure. So there's a good movie or documentary called What the Bleep Do We Know, which if anyone hasn't seen it, I definitely recommend it. There's a study that was illustrated in that movie where this Japanese researcher did experiments with water. And so he would take different water crystals or water samples, and he would put different words on them, like I love you, I hate you, and everything in between, like thank you, gratitude, die, all these different things. And what they would do is they would freeze the water, and then they would look at the water crystals, and they would see completely different patterns in the crystals based on what the word was that was given to it or shown to it. So